Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers, Zemo73 here, bringing you another feature match for the week. This time I am showing off my new take on Wolfgang 2, Red, White, Black. Kind of a continuation of the old version, but more built towards what the current meta is, not having to worry about Violet nearly as much, and just trying something a little bit heavier outside of Black. And I'm playing against Paul Clute, who's playing his take on Dante, Belial Midrange. Very similar to kind of the stuff that we saw out of the Bremonts out of Minnesota, but to his credit, Paul has kind of tweaked it a little bit and also kind of chilled the deck out just a little bit to be more focused on like what you would see at a locals level. So we'll see how this goes and see what comes to pass. The big thing to kind of note is that this Wolfgang list uses red more for like some utility cards, and you're going to see some pretty interesting tech choices here as we kind of go into the match. One thing to watch out for in this matchup is the fact that Dante's God's Art permanently shuts off our residence, but this creates kind of a weird situation where Dante Belial might want to just go ahead and pop off the God's Art of Dante very quickly against Wolfgang 2, but if he doesn't see Erythropias, that can come back to bite him because he has to potentially deal with Terminus. So if he only has really the Belial God's Art to be able to protect himself, that can be a little risky. So we'll have to see exactly how this plays out. Already seeing some very interesting cards in the hands of Paul. First turn, we're going to see that 6-stage stone, very traditional opening start here for these Dante turbo decks, which is we're going to go ahead and flip the Dante. We're going to respond by going ahead and doing the Black Witch here to stop the search. He does have another Virgil in hand, but we say, you know what, that's fine. We'll take the 1,000 damage. You can swing in for us for 10, and hey, we kind of got that one more card out of your hand. Now we don't have to deal with searches later. Calling that first stone, hitting a 6-stage stone on our side of the field. We're going to go ahead and use Permafrost from the hands to go ahead and hit that Virgil, just to say like, hey, you know what, we're not going to want to have to worry about untapping right now. And even if you have had a Prideful Rule in your hand, that Virgil's going to stay tapped at least for a turn, which gives us some time to play around. And then we'll swing in to deal that 400 damage. Now, the reason why we're feeling okay with that 400 is there's not a lot of stuff in the Belial deck outside of Virgil that has swiftness typically. If it was going to die anyway, it's going to be from spot removal anyway, so that's fine too. And if there's any point in time where we can get Paul down to 1,000 life, then we're in a very comfortable spot to be able to potentially life loss him to death, which is one of the kind of backup ways that this Wolfgang deck is playing main boarded to be able to deal with things like Belial. Floating some will, hitting that Ragstone on 2, so unfortunately just one will to play around with this turn. We are going to go ahead and cast that Residence. This is one of the things, again, where because of the way we're playing this deck, you know, if we use that God's Art now, that feels pretty good. We're going to go ahead and try to swing in for 4, see if we can get him to play a card or burn the God's Art now so we know whether or not to use Residence or not. Because the other thing, too, is if he does try to use Dante's God's Art right now to protect himself or versus Belial, we can respond by getting that Residence back at least one other time before he resolves the Dante God's Art, potentially. We could crack it for a 1, get a 1-drop, and then have it come back into play before Dante steals all of our graveyard abilities. So that's why we're swinging in aggressively first here. Because typically once they've flipped over the Dante, then you know, like that's the Gods that they're going to use first. Ultimately deciding to take it, so it goes down to 12. So we're going to go ahead and crack the Residence here now that we've done some damage. Go get a 1-drop. Really would have liked to have been able to go get a 2-drop in the form of Jewel, but ultimately didn't see it. We're going to go ahead and hit Graveyard. This is going to get us back up to 5,000. In response to Graveyard's Enter effect, we're going to try to bring back the Resident. And because he hasn't Goddarded yet, that's just going to happen. It goes on the chase. So a little bit interesting there that he chose not to Godsart in response to the search. Choosing to play this Lumia here to go back up to 16. And then ultimately having one more white to play during his turn, beginning of a Fairy Tale, which he's going to awaken, get these 2 tokens. Oh no, this is still during my turn because Lumia draws him a card. So we've got some tokens here. Got this Lumia, not too much pressure here. So he has that Inferno in hand. Inferno probably to use to reset our lives to equal amounts, but 16 isn't really something he can necessarily deal with right now. Calling Stone with the Dante. Another 6-stage Stone here. Down comes that Inferno, leaving him with just a white source because I'm a single ruler. He's going to go ahead and set our lives down to the same amount. So we're going to go down to 16 as well. Swings in for 4. We see that's fine. We'll take it. Go down to 12. We just have to stay above 4 life here. Swings in for another 4. Takes us down to 8. As long as we can stay above 4 life, that Virgil can't kill us. And we're pretty sure the more that he kind of taps out this way, the more confident we are. Even at 16 life, we're at a pretty good spot. Because what we can do is we can do some pretty silly things here, especially since we hit that Ragstone. We can call Stone. We can go try to search for a 2-drop. We'll try to get some chip damage in first. Try to swing with that Residence. See if we can get that 1 damage in. Says that's fine. I'll go down to 15. Swing in for 4. Blocks with the Lumia. In response, we're going to go ahead and crack. Do go ahead and decide to let that block happen here. There's an idea where we can go get like Scorched Mountain Plains here to kill the Lumia, but ultimately it's not going to kill anything. So we're going to try to do a search for a 2-drop, I believe. We only have access to a white stone here, which makes us feel pretty comfortable. We do have to worry about the Godsarts here. Ultimately, you see we do have that Power of Salvation in hand that we've been kind of playing around with. We just need to try to get him down to that 1,000 to be able to cast it. We're going to attempt to search for a 2-drop. No response. So this puts us in a pretty good spot to be able to close the game out here, because now that we are at a position, we can go ahead and grab Jewel. Now we have that 3-cost tax on Godsarts, so that 1 stone isn't going to be able to be used. So with that Will and those 2 stones that we still have access to, we can go ahead and do Judgment of Wolfgang. That'll get us to 4 Demonic Worlds. And knowing the potential this deck has for flying blockers, Terminus doesn't really make too much sense. He does have access to potential of the Prideful Rule here, so even popping a single Demonic World would be a problem to be able to potentially stop us. So what the smarter play here is, while he's tapped out on Godsart, just make it so Prideful Rule doesn't matter. We have 4 total unique Demonic Worlds here, going to 5 with a first layer, which will shoot him for 20 damage, and that will close out the game because he doesn't have access to be able to Godsart there. So taking advantage of some optimum searches, and we go into game 2. First layer being one of those situations where it doesn't take much, and as your Demonic Worlds have been building up, you can just close games, especially when you have something like Jewel to be able to prevent the Godsart from really being efficient. So lack of Prideful Rule certainly playing an impact in that first game here. So here in game 2, Paul decided to ship everything that wasn't a prideful rule. Makes a lot of sense. Same kind of play as last time. This is going to look very similar. First turn, Dante gets the Virgil, energize out Black Witch, has the Virgil anyway, take the 10. We'll go ahead and play the Residence. Now, this is a little bit greedy. It's that same kind of thing. If we're trying to make him use the Godzard on our turn proactively to set him down so we can kind of steal that Godzard for him. We really only need one single Demonic World off of this Residence to really maximize our value here. So forcing him to use a Godzard now when we're not really going to be hitting him for damage sets us up for a better situation later. We do play the Permafrost. He decides to... he wouldn't have taken any damage there, so we swung in for nothing. So we're in a good spot here. We've already used one of his Godzarts, so now we get to start swinging in with this Black Witch. We have access to more will. We can kind of start to kind of play our way through this situation. Start by swinging in for that 4, seeing if anything's going to happen. We're going to do second Godzart already. So now we've used both. Both of those Godzarts are gone. We have to have an Erythropia to be able to stabilize here, which feels great for us because that puts us in a position where if we can just build up demonic worlds effectively, keep ourselves alive, suddenly we're just like, hey, 5 demonic worlds equals death, because you'll be at 20 life. We're going to go ahead and search for a 2-drop. In response, he's going to go ahead and Prideful Rule here. So this is a little bit of an interesting point to Prideful Rule. It makes sense because he wants to be able to get Dante live. It is a little bit kind of misguided because it controls what it gives me more information to be able to search. So in this situation here, there's a world where because I'm recovered, we go for a 2-drop and we get wins, recover, and then we can like immediately judgment Wolfgang and kind of go off from there. Because he popped it beforehand, I'm not going to be able to recover 2 stones, so it's better for me to just go for 6th boon to produce some will, to have some will advantage during his turn. Pings me for 4, since he's got the extra will. One of the beauteous things about Virgil is that if you do have anything floating left over, you can just use it to burn out. Kind of deciding what he wants to try to do here. Going to go ahead and swing in for 10. I declare no blocks, and then as we start to go to record life point damage, he's like, before we've actually dealt damage, I'm going to go ahead and shoot some stuff with this Virgil, since I'm still attacking, shoot the board. So it hits the Black Witch for 4, hits me for 4, it takes me down to a grand total of 12, down because I was down to 26, and then another 6, I'll take another 14 there from the Virgil. So puts me in a pretty good spot where if this, if I can't answer this Fallen Angel, I'm just dead. Like again, in this situation, I can't go below 8. Sorry, really can't go below 9 because the Virgil himself will just kill me. So a little bit of a discussion here about what life totals are, just because of kind of what the situation is. Swings in, we're gonna have to go ahead and use the Garion to kill that token. We just needed to not immediately lose the game here. And we feel pretty comfortable again that there's not a lot of swiftness in the deck. But we are at a weird spot where if we don't kind of answer this Virgil immediately, we're just going to die. Because he can like pay 8, pay 2, shoot me for 8, recover, and then just ping me to death. So I'm in a 1-turn clock with this Virgil to have to try to deal with it. We do see a Judgmented Belial here. Get some extra tokens out here. This kind of makes sense for me. It's going to build him up some life resources and like show multiple threats. So if I can't necessarily try to answer what's on the field, you know, I have to answer everything on the field, otherwise I just lose. It does give me a lot of freedom, though, as the Wolfgang deck to kind of just do what I want. So we see a second first boon from a sixth boon to now the taxes doubled. We're going to go ahead and then search for a 2-drop. Looking at hand and seeing if there's something else I want to do. Try to think about exactly how we find our lethal here. We are searching for that 2-drop. This is one of the things this deck is doing too that's a lot different from other Wolfgang decks, is it's more built to not just need Terminus, or also it's also built in such a way that like we're going to use Terminus for a lot of different things rather than just killing you. So play the Raging Winds to recover 2 stones because we have 2 up. That because we're not going to risk hitting a stone here off of Calling Stone. Then Wolfgang's going to flip. That's going to get us the Paradise, which is then going to go get us the Fallen Angel of the Chasm and Terminus. So this is great here because we want to be able to have swiftness immediately, and we want to be able to kill this Virgil. So this Terminus can now swing, like it's free to swing. We have 3 Demonic Worlds total. And because that Virgil's tapped, it's a fair game for my Terminus to try to swing in at it. So we're going to swing. He's going to go try to block. We can respond by tapping 2 Demonic Worlds to give a -8/-8 to the board. This will kill a Belial, and it'll kill the tokens, and it'll make Virgil a 2/2. So now my Terminus, Fallen Angel of Terminus, Belial as a resonator, can kill the Virgil, no problem, because he is now a 2/2, so I will win the fight there. So we've effectively cleared the board state in a really real way. We have tapped out. We're tapping out back. It's the battle of tap outs from both players here. But again, a lack of swiftness feels pretty good, and the ability to potentially pump up Wolfgang also feels very good too. So we're going to see a Belial's rule. Just make the silly point here of like tapping my Wolfgang to like pump up the Terminus. It doesn't do anything. And knowing that all my guys are going to get RFG'd. We don't really care about that too much because we play Light of Raisin Revive to be able to get Terminus back. Ultimately, Paul choosing to just pass the turn at that point. One thing to note, because it will come up later, is that I completely forgot to get the free stone that comes off of Wolfgang Judgmenting. We catch it later, and kind of you'll see when the moment comes that I talk about it. Produce some will here. Would have been another 6-stage stone if I had called stone, but we don't want to risk that where the situation was, where if I miss 6-stage stone, I just lose. So we're sitting pretty here. We've got access to floating will. We floated red off of the 6-stage stone here because we want the white to be able to have Raise and Revive. So the Raise and Revive is great here because it gets us Terminus. We do have that nice comfortable 6-stage Void Stone because it doesn't recover J rulers, just rulers. But hey, now we've got a Terminus back. Terminus is really good in this matchup, being able to control the tokens really well with his -8/-8, as well as make Virgil significantly less. Things to deal with, and he has Barrier White. The best removal spell that they have access to is Prideful Rule, and it just can't touch Terminus, which is great. So we let him play the Choir of Fallen Angels, get a token, and then before draw on his turn, we're going to use Terminus to give him that permanent -8/-8 through the turn. We really want that to be stable to say, hey, you're probably just going to have to draw Callstone Pass because you're really not going to play any Resonators here. That being said, Paul's deck does have access to board wipes. We saw that before with Belial's rule, but that doesn't answer Wolfgang. So there's some kind of trade-offs there. Also keep in mind the current tax on God's Hearts is 8. because each jewel is giving its own separate tax, and there are 4 unique demonic worlds on the field. So 8 currently is the cost to pay for any God's Art. It is very quickly to build up to be an unpayable amount, but that's to be said. Paul has already used both of his God's Arts here, so he would need an Erythropia to be able to make it do anything else in any way. Paul playing Astema's Wrath here. This lets him search for any darkness card in his deck. So we make an interesting play here. We're looking at this and we're saying, okay, we have a Black Witch in hand, but, you know, what could he be trying to search for? That's this, that we can't already answer with what we have in our hand. He doesn't have access to, you know, Resonators and everything else. And we make, you know, if he does choose to search for a Belial's rule, that's just going to hit Terminus, and that feels fine because we can just bring it back with another Raise and Revive. Like, we're trying to see about, do we need to expend the resources on a Black Witch now versus try to answer the card that he's trying to search for. Ultimately, we make the decision that we can probably answer the card he's going to play, and that was a mistake because we completely forgot about Inferno. So Inferno gets cast here, the mode to have parity of boards. This forces me to banish until I control the same number of entities as him. I can't banish the jewels, they can't be banished, and I can't banish J rulers, so I still get to keep a nice little 2 cost tax here. Currently still a tax of 4, essentially, because I have 2 demonic world names and 2 taxing sources. But the problem is that forces me to banish, so Raise and Revive doesn't help if a Terminus is in the graveyard. And just to add insult to injury, at the end of the turn we did have the Black Witch and we could have cast it. So a little bit of a misplay to not say, hey, you know what, it would have been better to force him to try to answer the Black Witch, which would have then potentially tapped him out from whatever he was trying to search for versus trying to answer the card he was searching for. Be the problem, don't just try to spend your time solving problems. So right now we're sitting on a threatened 11 damage, but he's at 16. We have free reign for the turn. He's not going to be able to play any cards. He's completely tapped out. Ultimately deciding to try to potentially call stone or like see if we can find some way here to be able to close out the game. And this is where our next little tech card comes in, which I really like a lot. We are playing an Excalibur Cassius. So playing Excalibur Cassius here, it removes the top 3 cards of our graveyard from the game, and then they gain the ability to be cast as if they were in our hand. The reason why I like this card a lot is it ignores the Dante God's Art, because they gain that ability in a timestamp after Dante's resolved, so I just essentially paid to draw 3. Normally this would be used as quick cast, but because of the situation and like having the free opportunity here, we're going to go ahead and take advantage of it. Plus we also want to call another stone. So we're going to go ahead and crack him in for here for a quick 4. Takes him down to 16. Finally seeing some bloodshed here. See not much in the hand of Paul. I do see a Lilius Petal there. Choosing to play from the RFG area a Necronomicon barrier. This is to be able to go get us another demonic world from the deck. This is another thing that this deck, this take on the deck is using a lot more proactively, is actually using Necronomicon barrier to search, because we kind of flip weirdly, and it's also just deck thinning. So we're gonna go ahead and grab Graveyard of Amadeus now that we've seen the Inferno be used, at least 1 copy. We don't know if he runs multiple. This is nice because we have 3 unique demonic worlds here, so it gets us back up to 42, and now we're at a tax of 6. This is also nice in this situation because the taxing is really nice against Stan. Now that we've killed both Belial and Dante and we're kind of chipping him away, it could be potentially tempting for Paul to say, well, I'm just going to go into Satan. He has to pay 6. He has to pay 2 to put him into play, and then he'd have to pay 6 to be able to actually do the effect. So right now, that's just far outside of his reach. Don't get me wrong, he could get there very quickly if he just calls stone and kind of stabilizes and I can't find closure, but it puts us in a position where we feel pretty comfortable. Just seeing not much aggression, not a lot of super good threats in Paul's hand here, but does have pass the turn there. Just passes and leaves up a whole handful of stuff. You see the Lumias, which will kind of help with parity to keep himself alive. Floating some will, calling a stone, hitting the rag stone here. We would be at 6 stones. If you had remembered that Wolfgang gets us a stone on flip, we're going to go in and swing for an attempted 4 to take him down to 12. And then at the end of my turn, we're going to see a Lilius Petal as the mode to shoot everything. So this is going to deal 9 damage to the board, and he does have 3 unique stones. So this is then going to get to come into play as the Resonator side, kill the Wolfgang 2, and come in with those 9 +1/+1 counters. So this kind of plays into my favor, because I really kind of want the Wolfgang to die, because the Wolfgang... oh, he's doing this... I apologize. He's doing this before I actually deal damage. So he'll still be at 16. Seeing if there's anything I want to cast from the RFG before I let that resolve. He says that's fine. This will kill the Wolfgang when the Nine-Tailed Fox enters. But now I can search for a Demonic World here. The one thing that this deck has done, I will say, as the Wolfgang deck, to try to find room for tech slots is that we are playing a much skinnier Demonic World package, a lot more 1-ofs, a little bit heavier lack of 2-ofs, as we've seen from previous lists. I do believe I floated black-green before I called stone, so then the forest is going to come into play here, so we have a -3 on the board. So we're at a weird spot here where we can go get a first layer and like try to risk it to just like shoot him for 16 right now, but we feel like maybe this is where we start to kind of catch. One, I will say this: remember to read all of your cards and recognize that Wolfgang gets you a stone. 2, remember to read the cost of all your Demonic Worlds, because it's going to look a little bit weird on screen how this is all going to sequence out. Ultimately, in the grand scheme of if we had been playing properly, it wouldn't have mattered, but you'll see me do something a little bit weird here. So the concern about potential doing the play here of going straight into the first layer would be that if he does have a Black Witch in hand, we just kind of like get wrecked there. So instead we're going to play Swamp. Swamp is going to get us to take 4 cards out of his hand, because we have 4 uniques. Going to see a beginning of a Fairy Tale here, which will get him to draw a card. Those tokens will die immediately as soon as the Swamp resolves, because there's a -4/-4 on the field once it resolves. But he's essentially trying to potentially try to dig into something like a Prideful Rule to be able to keep those tokens alive then, or something of the sort. And then we search here for a 1-drop. So this is what I'm talking about. Recognize that if we had that second stone, this play would have been legal, as opposed to Jeremy being stupid and not reading cards. I grabbed the first layer, which is a 2 cost, not a 1 cost, and shoot him for lethal. But we both recognize that like I should have had that other stone, and that would have been the game anyway. So there you guys have it. Again, please don't be like me and mistakenly track what costs you have, and make sure to always remember to ramp those stones. But there you guys have it. The deck list for these lists will be up later this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this new take on Wolfgang 2. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.